Hello, welcome to Web of Stories. My name is Melinda, and welcome to March on the Moors. This is my first specifically March on the Moors video. So March on the Moors is a month-long reading event about the Brontes because I love the Brontes. Down below, let me link right away if you've never read the Brontes, where to start, and the announcement video for this event. But I wanted to kick it off with a tag, so I put together this little Bronte novel tag. Don't worry, you do not need to have read any Bronte novels for this tag. It's just a fun little way to go through the books. So there are, I took each of the 7 Bronte novels, and based on what in most cases, what the book is about, I want you to suggest another book. So let's get started. And these are in alphabetical order. That's how I decided to do it. So we're going to start with AGNES GREY. And AGNES GREY is, if you didn't know, the read-along book for this month. On the March on the Moors Discord, there's a thread for it. Also, we're going to have a Voxer group for it, so let me know if you're interested in it. But for AGNES GREY is about a woman working as a governess. And this is a book about a woman in the workplace. This was a no-brainer for me. Lessons in Chemistry. So this is the story of Elizabeth Zott, who mid-20th century, she is incredibly intelligent, and she's a chemist. She did not get a PhD for reasons that are discussed in this book, but in the scientific field they are not welcoming to women, shall we say, and things happen. And throughout the course, she ends up hosting a TV show cooking show where she talks about cooking in terms of chemistry. It's delightful, but there are some things in it that are a little hard, but I think it's a pretty accurate view of what it was for women in the sciences in the mid-20th century. So, lessons in chemistry. The next one is we have Jane Eyre. So Jane Eyre is one of the I call them the big 3 Bronte novels. It's the story of Jane Eyre, who's a young orphan making her way in the world. And for this, I chose, let's go down here. I chose a coming-of-age novel centered around a female character. There's a lot of coming-of-age novels, but it always seems to me it's more likely to be around a male character, but I wanted one around a female character. And one I chose for this is a book called Piecing Me Together by Renee Watson. Renee Watson is she's from Oregon. She's from Portland, Oregon. I think she lives in New York now, but a lot of her books are set in Portland, as this one is. And this is the story of a young African-American girl who attends a private high school in Portland that is majority white. And it's sort of her experiences as being the scholarship kid and the token Black kid, and trying to find her own way in it. It is a young adult novel, and it's one of those young adult novels I like because it doesn't focus on romance. I don't think there's even a romantic element in this book. It's more about this girl finding her way in the world, and she does deal with issues of racism. But she herself questions kind of what's going on and what are people's intentions, not necessarily in racism, but maybe sometimes she sees things as not as they are. I really enjoyed this novel. I did it on audio. The author narrates it. She's good enough. Let's just put it that way. But I think it's fine to read or listen to. And she goes to Powell's in this book. So, hey, yeah, we get some literary tourism and go to Powell's with Piecing Me Together. The next book is The Professor by Charlotte Bronte. So The Professor was the first book that Charlotte Bronte wrote, but the last book that was published. It was published posthumously. And if you've seen any of my other videos, you kind of know my feelings on it, which is I would recommend The Professor if you feel like you have to be a completist or you really kind of want to get into Charlotte Bronte's psyche. Otherwise, I wouldn't recommend this book. It just isn't a very good book. Sorry, it just isn't. So for this is the one where I don't really go by the content of the book, is a book by a favorite author that is not your favorite. Now, I'm not saying a book that you hate by your favorite author. I'm just saying one that's not your favorite. And when I wrote this prompt, a bunch of titles popped into my head, and I realized a lot of them were new or newer releases. And I personally wanted to stay away from that. If you can do whatever you want. I'm just saying how I chose this book. So I decided to go back a little bit into backlist. And this is one that I chose, and that is All the Devils Are Here by Louise Penny. Do I hate this book? No. I don't hate it. It's just not my favorite. If I had to rank, this is like number 15, I think, something like that. It's in the teens. Book in the Three Pines series by Louise Penny. If I had to rank those books, I would rank this towards the bottom, if not at the bottom. That doesn't mean it's a bad book. It just means it's not my favorite. Why isn't it my favorite? Basically, it's not my favorite because it doesn't take place in Three Pines. They go to, as you might have guessed from the cover, they go to Paris. Paris is a great city. Yay, Paris. But that's not why I read the Three Pines series. I read the Three Pines series for Three Pines in Canada. And so it felt really weird to have them in Paris. And this just didn't feel like a Three Pines book to me. Not saying it's bad. There's a mystery in it. There's characters we love in it. Louise Penny's a great writer, all that. This just wasn't my favorite Three Pines book. But there you go. Can't all be winners. And now we're going to move on to Shirley, which is a book about female friendship. This follows Caroline and Shirley, who are two young women in early 19th century England. And this is a social novel, which is not something that Charlotte Bronte really wrote a lot. This is if you watch my video on where to start, this is one of the places I would recommend starting. Something weird is happening outside. Sorry. But, you know, it's different. It's worth reading. It is a long one, I will warn you. But this one, for Shirley, I just want a book about female friendships. And I decided to go the sort of fun way and the very un-Brontean way and do my Best Friend's Exorcism by Grady Hendrix. This is the first Grady Hendrix book that I've read, and it's still my favorite Grady Hendrix book. So this is set in the 80s, so there's lots of 80s nostalgia. And it's about two girls, and one of them seems to be possessed by something, and the other one tries to save her and there's an exorcism. I mean, it's pretty clear from the title what this book is about. But the friendship in this book is so well written. And I've said this about Grady Hendrix before. For a dude, he writes women really well. And I think he did this friendship so well between the two. And they're really, you know, they're well-drawn characters as well. Very tongue-in-cheek, funny, but the friendship is really the reason. And yeah, it's a little freaky at points, but the friendship is really, for me, the heart of this book, the friendship between the two girls. I gave my copy to Bookish Best Friend appropriately, so I have to put a picture up there of it. Okay, after Shirley, we're going to go to the second of the big three and my personal favorite, which is The Tenant of Wildfell Hall by Anne Bronte. So, Tenant of Wildfell Hall is about a woman who leaves an abusive marriage. So this is a book about someone in a toxic relation or recovering from a toxic relationship. And for this, I chose The Marriage Portrait by Maggie O'Farrell. So this is the story of a young girl named Lucretia. She is a young Florentine, from a Florentine noble family, and she's married off very young, like I want to say like 13 or 14, I can't quite remember, to a duke in another part of Italy, because that's when they're all city-states. And this is true. This actually, like, this is a real person. And her husband commissioned a portrait of her. A year after her marriage, she's dead. And it is suspected that her husband killed her. And this is everything that goes on with that. This was a book I resisted reading for a long time. Hamnet is one of my favorite novels, Hamnet by Maggie O'Farrell. And when I read Hamnet, it had been out for a while, so I ended up reading Hamnet only shortly before this book was released. And when it was released, a lot of people had said, oh, this isn't as good as Hamnet. So I was like, oh, I don't know if I want to read it. But then my book club just in the last couple months did it, and I loved it. And I think that putting some space between Hamnet and The Marriage Portrait is a good thing. Let's just put it that way. Also, I read another Maggie O'Farrell book between the two. I read I Am, which is a memoir, but it was like a little bit of a palate cleanser between the two. But this is a beautiful novel. It's emotional. I think it's really well done as far as what the main character, what Lucretia is experiencing and what she feels about what's going on and how she deals sort of emotionally and psychologically with what's going on. But yeah, so I would say The Marriage Portrait by Maggie O'Farrell. Okay, and now we're going to Villette. So this is Charlotte Bronte's third novel, and it is the story of a woman named Lucy. Her name is not Villette. A lot of people think that the main character's name is Villette. It's not. It's Lucy Snow. And Lucy Snow is an English woman of limited means who ends up taking a job as a teacher in a girls' school on the continent, I think in Belgium, in a town called Villette. That's where you get the name. And I need to reread this book. After reading The Professor, I need to reread this book. See really what I think of it. But this book is about a character in a new land. So a character that goes somewhere and starts a new life in a new land. And for this, I chose Magic Lessons by Alice Hoffman. So this is the Practical Magic series. Is really hard to say what book comes first because Alice Hoffman wrote Practical Magic and then like 25 years later decided to make it a series. So chronologically, this is the first book, chronologically as of the storyline. So this is the story of Mariah Owens, or Maria. It should be pronounced Mariah. At the time, that's how that name would be pronounced, but I think in the audiobook it's Maria. Mariah Owens, who is a witch. And she is, as a young woman, she is sent for reasons to the New World. She first goes to, I want to say Bermuda, is that right? Somewhere in the Caribbean. But then she ends up in New York and Massachusetts. And so that's really where her growing up happens, is in that. And she's sent there on her own with nothing. Like she's sold into indentured servitude kind of without her knowledge and just is put on a boat and sent. And she's also the matriarch of this entire Owens family. So she's the one who starts it all, but she starts it all in the New World. And she is there pre-revolutionary. So this is pre-revolutionary. Well, it's in the late 17th century because there's a reference there with the witch trials, which were in 1692, 1693. So there are things that happen in this book that are referenced in Practical Magic, I believe. I know in the movie they're referenced. I haven't seen the movie in a long time. I should watch the movie. But I actually read this book first out of all of them. And my personal take, I mean, there's a lot of the practice for Practical Magic books. And as long as you read the last book last, you're probably fine in whatever order you read them in. I personally recommend starting with this one because I like to read chronologically, historically. So, but yeah, so that's my character, a young woman, a character in a new land. And finally, we have the final of the big three and sort of the most Marmite book of them all, and that is Wuthering Heights. This is Emily Bronte's only novel. And people either love or hate this book, but that's not where I went with this one. This one is a book where a house or a building of some sort plays a major role. And for this one, I decided to get the low-hanging fruit before anyone else got it. And I went for Northwoods by Daniel Mason. So Northwoods is about a house in Western Massachusetts, and you just follow this house through history and the different inhabitants that are there. It starts with a young couple that escaped a Puritan colony, and they're the ones who originally built this house, and the house goes all the way up to modern day. It's very interesting, sometimes experimental storytelling. There is a very graphic scene of exuberant bug sex, so just know that going in. But yeah, there's exuberant bug sex in that book. Exuberant. But yeah, there are many characters in this book, but the real character, the one you follow all the way through, is the house. And I really, really liked how he did that. I like the fact that he told some of the stories in different ways, how he tied things together. You got a really good sense of time because you have this stationary object, which is the house, but time is not stationary. I just thought it was I think it's the first book I've read. I think it's the only book I've read by Daniel Mason, although I did recently read a short story by him. I know some people, Northwoods didn't work for everybody, and I understand that. Wuthering Heights certainly doesn't work for everybody. but hey, if you want to try something that kind of takes the idea of centering something other than a character at the center of a book, that's a great one to go. And of course, in Wuthering Heights, the House of Wuthering Heights is quite important. So there we are. These 7 Bronte novels and 7 books that I would use, that I would recommend if they were prompts. Did I say that right? Anyway. So now it's time to tag some people. And I normally tag, I usually tag 3 people, but because this is the first tag, I mean, this is an original tag, I'm gonna tag 10 people. And so here we go. And of course, if you do this, please tag me back. And if I don't tag you and you want to do it, please do it. I would love to see your tag. As I said, I limited myself to 10. Otherwise, I'd be tagging a bazillion people. And so here we go. First is Angelia at Read and Reread. And then Becca at Read Becca. Deb at Rainer Reads. Ellen at Ellen Made Book Club. Jim at Jim's Books, Reading, and Stuff. He is a big Wuthering Heights fan. Maria Andrea at Books of Bocadillos. Michelle at Michelle and Reads, who I am doing a buddy read for March on the Moors with. Nicole at Noteworthy Fiction, who I tried to buddy read Shirley with. that was not the most successful buddy read. It's Shirley's interesting. I liked it, but I mean it's not Jane Eyre. Let's just put it that way. Pat at Book Chat with Pat. Everyone knows Pat. Pat is like the heart of BookTube, I've decided. Sue at Sue Jackson. And is that 10? Because for some reason I have Nicole here twice. Let me count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yes, I just edited wrong. So Nicole apparently you've been tagged twice. I don't know what I was thinking. Anyway, if you choose to do this tag, please tag me back. And thank you for indulging me in this. And I hope that you join me with March on the Moors. Again, the announcement video and the book suggestion video is down below. So I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.